Hello, Chris Jarvis at Acrylic Pixel here, and today I'm going to do a video on why I think you didn't like The Last of Us Part 2. Okay, so here are some potential ideas for improvement, what I would have done differently if I was in charge of The Last of Us 2, things which I think would have been more interesting to explore, and I'll explain my reasons why. The first thing that I would have changed, or is at least just an interesting thing to think about, so the WLF torture SCARs, but the SCARs don't really torture the WLF. They just sort of string them up to die, fairly quickly in comparison to the WLF. What if the SCARs tortured the WLF and the WLF had a different moral compass and they thought that torturing was wrong? What effect would that have? Well, you'd have more empathy for Abby. The fact that she tortured Joel would have more of an impact because it would have been out of character. We learn throughout the game that Abby torturing Joel isn't really that big of a deal. She used to torture SCARs, so the fact that she tortured the killer of her father isn't really a big leap. If they changed that and had the WLF align more with kind of real world military values, they kind of liberated, in the story they liberated the people from the army that were being quite oppressive, and were signaling people, were sort of, killing people towards the end of it. They were not letting people in, so they were, abandoning people. They weren't doing a very good job of organising, so, the WLF took over. They turned out to be pretty bad. If the WLF were more morally aligned to what people could relate to playing the game, torture is wrong, then Abby's journey had the potential to be a bit more believable, a bit more grounded, have a bit more of a story arc. Another thing which would have helped with that is if instead of Ellie having PTSD about Joel's death, if Abby had PTSD flashbacks, and if she started to regret the actions of what she did to Joel, that isn't explored in the game at all. She never says that she regrets killing Joel in that way. She never says that she regrets killing Joel. She never says that it wasn't the right thing to do. She just says, oh, I'm trying to lighten the load, I'm trying to make things better. That's as much, you just get a hint of what she's trying to do. You never get her opinion on what she's done. You never get her to question how it came to be that all her friends have died in this horrific way. She never gets that quandary. She never goes through what Ellie's going through, even though they've had kind of similar lives. So if the WLF were a bit better, and if Abby had PTSD, that would have been interesting to explore. The box on the game says this is a complex game about revenge. To me, it's not really that complex because these questions aren't explored. These consequences aren't explored. They're hinted at, but a lot of it is left up to the player to kind of make their own decisions. And to me, when you have character motivation, character desire, character development, which is ambiguous, it doesn't work. You can have ambiguity when it comes to a theme of a game, when it comes to exploring an argument, a counter-argument for an idea or an ideal. You can have ambiguity then. You can just present two sides of the argument and then just let the player come up with their own decision. When you have ambiguity about what a character is thinking and feeling, that just creates this disjointed connection with the player. It totally wrecks the suspension of disbelief, and that's where a lot of the game fell down for me. I think it's really worth saying, I think there was some great ingredients and great moments and great things about the game which were missed, which should have been explored more. It could have been changed in a way that made more sense to the player as you were playing it, felt more sympathy for each character and their motivations. The SCARs are great. The WLF and the SCAR war, that made sense. Where they were coming from made sense. If Abby and Ellie kind of found common ground. Maybe they joined together. Maybe they both were trying to save Yara and Lev. That would have been interesting. So the first half of the game could have been about revenge. Abby could have been discovering her friends, coming to terms with what she'd done and the way she'd done it, come to regret it, had a fisticuffs with Ellie. They both got to present their side of the argument. Something dramatic, naughty doggy kind of happened, and they both are in this situation where they feel morally obliged to work together to try and save Yara and Lev. They then together learn more about, the SCAR culture and the war and Isaac, and they both again feel morally obligated to try and save the children in that situation against Isaac. That would have been more... That would have then had more resolution. You would have gone through a story arc. You would have had a beginning, middle, and end to the story. There would have been a reason for all the blood and the gore and the violence and the death. As it stands, there was no real reason for it. No one really learnt any lessons that weren't already learnt at the beginning of the story, or known about at the beginning of the story. There would have been more consequence to the actions in the first half of the game, to all the blood and the guts and the gore and the death. But there wasn't, so I think that would have been an interesting change. Another thing that I would have changed about the game, which I think would have been better, was that if Abby had found throughout the game each one of her friends murdered by Ellie, and the game would be about her trying to get to her next friend before Ellie had got there, to try and save them. That would have been interesting, because that would have forced Abby to sort of question her decision, face the morality of her decision to torture Joel, and sort of maybe come to terms with the fact that she kind of brought this on herself in some ways. And now I'm not saying that it would have gone down like that, but I think it would have been interesting if the game was about that development. Instead, Abby's character development was all about these random kids which she found and wanted to protect. I thought that was great in the way it was told, and it was great in the fact that she was going through some sort of development, but if it didn't link back to the main story, it didn't link back, it was just totally separate from Ellie's story. The SCAR kids were totally separate to Ellie's story. To Ellie, the SCARs were just another enemy, another inconvenience that got in the way of her revenge mission. It wasn't linked. It was too disconnected from Ellie and Ellie's story. So if Abby was trying to track down her friends and prevent them from being killed and discovering their murdered bodies, I think that would have been great. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section down below. There's a lot of reviews now for The Last of Us 2. I didn't want to do a typical review. I had over an hour's worth of stuff to say. Still haven't recorded everything. So I thought it's best to kind of do like a little mini-series. I'm going to cover characters, I'm going to cover theme, I'm going to cover interesting things that I've discovered or found. I'm going to cover a few different bits and pieces, so there should be a few different videos for you to enjoy. You can pick and choose which ones you think would be interesting. So thumbs up if you like the video, leave a comment if you've got anything to say. Please try and be nice. I've tried to be nice, so it'd be nice if you were nice. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my content, and I will see you in the next one.